Jimmy and Wen Jiaolin. The final goodbye sounds like the end, but there is clearly a message after this, so it's not. Okay, Alicia and Zhang Yoming. We'll go back to you guys. A black box. 2 p.m. The 32nd floor of the Shenglong Court building. The women's restroom. I pressed a button on my phone, timed to the movement of the hands on my watch. Almost immediately, I heard a muffled boom from the bottom of the building. The entire building shook slightly for a few seconds and made a subtle grinding sound. I heard the latest instructions coming from the building's security team leader on the radio, broadcast through their dedicated security channel. He wanted 2 guards on the top floor and the rest on the ground floor. I turned off the radio and walked out of the bathroom in a janitor's uniform. I blended into a crowd of panicking and confused salarymen. Then I ducked into the security stairwell and went up to the 33rd floor, the highest floor of the building, which was reserved exclusively for the chief executives of the corporation. I reached for the knife hidden at my waist. I planned to ambush the 2 guards before they noticed me. However, there was no one in the hallway. I opened the door to the president's office. There was no one there either. I began to scour through the office. When I opened the closet, a body rolled out from inside. The door was kicked open. I took 2 steps back, then sprinted forward and burst through the window. I held onto the rope with my right hand and descended all the way to the ground from the outside of the building. A couple of people had seen me while I was dropping down and let out some admiring and terrified gasps. But their attention was soon pulled away by the explosion from the top floor. The body in the closet had been my target tonight, the president of Shenglong Corp, Liang Shilong. Someone had gotten to him before I could. What I couldn't understand though was why a bomb was tied to his body. It was the kind of bomb that would detonate upon disturbance or when the timer ran out. It was much more powerful than the one I had made. I could only think of one reason. The other assassin had known that someone else was after the same target, so it had been a prank. In fact, my mission tonight was more than just killing Liang. There was something else. I was supposed to retrieve a black metal box that he had. I had no idea what was inside the box, but it must be something extremely important. However, I was afraid that the box had fallen into the hands of the other assassin too. Who could this person be? Had he known that Ray had also been looking for the same box? Was the prank specifically designed for me? Pain from my left arm interrupted my thoughts. Only then did I realize that my left arm had been blown into pieces. My left palm had completely disappeared. Alicia. Okay. That doesn't sound good. Disasters in Unit 4. Oh god. Lieutenant Kang was not here, and neither was Officer Minjun nor Officer Jiyeon. I was alone in the office, working on the suspect's statements and feeling a little lonely. The lieutenant had told me to make him pay. Officer Jiyeon had said to me that Lieutenant Kang used to tamper with the amount of goods and money when dealing with smuggling cases, so that the criminals would get a heavier sentence. But this guy was already an accomplice to a murder. How could I make the case worse? I didn't know what to do. I was scratching my head when the phone on the lieutenant's desk rang. It was an anonymous tip to a murder. Don't just go out on your own again. However, Unit 4 usually handled cases related to gang violence or drugs. Why would we get a tip about a murder? I wasn't sure how to deal with this situation, although I didn't have much at hand to deal with right now anyway. My heart of justice was beating with excitement. I grabbed my gun and walked out. I was about to take the stairs when I heard someone yelling loudly behind me. I turned around. It was Lieutenant Kim Jong-ho of Unit 3. Lieutenant Kim asked if I was heading to the murder scene reported by the anonymous tip earlier. He said I should not go alone and that he was coming along with me so that we could look after each other. It seemed like a good idea. We got into his patrol car and started the siren. 20 minutes later, we arrived at the apartment building of the scene. It was a 2-floor rental building. I could vaguely see fire through the windows of one apartment in the middle of the 2nd floor. Something wasn't right. Anybody home? No. I knocked on the door. There was no response. I knocked even harder and yelled some more, but still nothing. Lieutenant Kim stopped me and said we should just wait for the apartment manager to open the door for us. Now you should barge into the door. The whole apartment had been engulfed in fire. When the manager turned the key and touched the doorknob, he suddenly jumped back like he had been shocked. Well, I assume if the doorknob is connected to the other part of the handle on the inside, it's gonna be hot as fuck. I stepped ahead and grabbed the knob. It felt like a soldering iron burning my palm. I bit my own lips to stop myself from screaming. As soon as I forced the door open, flames leapt out of the apartment along with a wave of heat. I could almost smell my hair getting burnt. Lieutenant Kim and I had to take a few steps back. If the tips had been true, there might still be people inside. I took a step towards the door, but Lieutenant Kim grabbed me. Are you crazy? Look at the fire. You'll be burned to ashes. We've been here for over 20 minutes. Whoever might still be in there is already dead. He made a good point. We waited until the firefighters put out the fire before we finally went into the apartment. Everything inside had been scorched. All of the furniture had been incinerated. We found 2 bodies that were completely unrecognizable due to fire. One in the bathroom, the other in the living room. We had to send them back for autopsies. We didn't learn the identities of the bodies until the next day. I could not have imagined that they were Officer Minjun and Lieutenant Kang. I should have charged inside. I could have saved them. Chang Yunmin. Huh. Interesting. Okay. To open the door for us. Door was kicked open. You know what? Let's try this. That sounds interesting. I recognized the man lying on the floor. Officer Minjun's eyes were wide open. There was a dark brown stain near his chest on his dark-colored shirt. The blood had already dried. Before I could check any further, the officers from Unit 3 who had followed us here had pushed me aside and started examining the body themselves and taking notes. It was a little strange. I was the one who had received the tip in the first place, but the scene had now been overrun by Unit 3. Soon the CSI unit arrived too. I still couldn't quite accept Officer Minjun's death, as the guys from Unit 3 wouldn't let me near the body. I had no choice but to wander around the living room. When I walked past the dresser in the living room, I noticed a knocked over picture frame. I flipped it over. It was a photo of Lieutenant Kang with a woman in her 30s. Hey you, don't touch anything. Yes, you! The men from Unit 3 kicked me out of the apartment. I had to stand by the door and watch them carry Officer Minjun's body away in a body bag. Even more bizarrely, they had found Lieutenant Kang passed out in the bathroom due to apparent alcohol poisoning. I only found out later that the place had been Lieutenant Kang's apartment. I held onto the rope with my right hand and descended all the way to the ground from the outside of the building. I was also carrying a black metal box in my left arm. Okay, this already sounds like an S. I had accidentally found the box when I dropped down to the floor to get away from the heavy smoke. It had been glued to the bottom of the couch. Although the young Shilong was nowhere to be found, Ray had instructed me that the metal box was my top priority. The guards broke into the office just after I had escaped through the window. I could hear him directing their whole team to go after me, but it was already too late. I started my motorcycle and went into full throttle. Minutes later, I had arrived at the back alley behind Melody Hall. Ray opened the box in front of me. Inside of the box were 2 cubes the size of a palm with different markings on them. Ray gave me a reward after he made sure the items were intact. After that day, I had a dragon tattoo put on my stomach. Ray said that I'd earned that mark as evidence that I had truly become his. Okay, that's only an A. What about this? Okay, that doesn't change anything. Alright, go on. My target, the president of Shenglong Corp, Liang Shilong, was supposed to be in the office, but he was nowhere to be found. Besides killing him, I had an even more important task, which was to find a black metal box. I got lucky. I accidentally found the metal box that Ray had asked me to find when I dropped down to the floor to get away from the heavy smoke. It had been glued to the bottom of the couch. After leaving the office, I ducked into the security stairwell again. There was almost nobody in it. I was wearing a janitor's uniform and calmly started walking down from the 33rd floor. I got down to the 5th floor. 4 security guards, followed by someone in a doctor's coat, walked past me and climbed up the stairs. The person in the coat looked a little familiar, so I turned my head and took another glance at him. Then I realized that he was looking at me too. And then I remembered. He was the doctor summoned to check up on me at Manijia's mansion. Manijia's entire household had been wiped out, and everybody in the underground world knew that the Black Dragon Gang had done it. Yet nobody dared to say a word about it. After all, Manijia was merely a money man who had no other connections or support. Nobody knew that there had been any survivors from the unfortunate accident. But if anybody were to survive, that person must be deeply involved with the Black Dragon Gang. If the doctor had recognized me and told anyone about my presence, Shanglong Corp would be able to connect the gang to their boss's death. Ray would be in serious trouble. We were getting further away from each other, one step at a time, and this uneasy feeling kept dripping from my heart like a leaking water tap, one drop at a time. I made up my mind just before they were about to disappear at the corner of the stairs. My dagger cut through the air like a silver lightning bolt and went through the doctor's throat. In the next second, 4 bullets left the silencer of my gun and took out the others in the stairwell. I gave the doctor who had saved my life one last look. He was lying on the stairs with his left hand over his chest. I never learned what his name was, and I would never have a chance to ask him. I closed my eyes, shook my head, and turned around. It was too late when I suddenly realized something had just touched my back. A cold, familiar, yet strange sensation kept pushing forward through my skin. Through the gaps between my back ribs, through my heart, and finally through the gaps between my front ribs and my skin in front. My dagger had missed the artery by just a little. The tiny bit of mercy that remained in my heart had turned out to be my fatal mistake. I watched the box dropped out of my arm and fell down the stairs, clanking the whole way down. I reached out, attempting to catch it, but I couldn't. Okay. It's not an S. My kung fu instincts from my Shaolin training were telling me that I should not stay here any longer, and that I needed to get out as soon as possible. Accompanied by the sound of shattering glass, I landed on the ground steadily. Then I saw 2 cars stopping in front of the apartment building. Every person coming out of the cars was an officer from Unit 3. The image of Officer Min Jun lying there with his eyes wide open was still imprinted in my mind. How did he die? Why was he there? Why would Unit 3 show up right now? And what about that suspicious anonymous tip? There were too many puzzles that I wanted to discuss with Lieutenant Kang when I saw him. Never would have ever guessed that the next day I would learn an even more shocking piece of news. The lieutenant had died too, and they put out a warrant for me, saying that I had become a fugitive. This case, that had so many ties to Unit 4, had turned into a wild horse charging down a freeway. I no longer had any control over the situation. Perhaps I should not have just run away. Maybe things would have been different if I had just stayed. Okay. So we'll go back to this, but this didn't change anything, did it? No, don't show hints. Wait, did I swap them? Yeah. Doesn't matter. What about this? No smoke, no fire from here. I held onto the rope with my right hand and descended all the way to the ground from the outside of the building. A couple of people had seen me while I was dropping down and let out some admiring and terrified gasps. But their attention was soon pulled away from the explosion from the top floor. Yep, we've read all of this. Okay. Nope, couldn't find the black box either. Oh, so then there needs to be smoke. Okay. Could have had more time if it weren't for a bomb that had been placed in a closet by someone. I had busted through the window as soon as I heard the ticking sound coming from inside the closet, but it was already too late. Okay. I recognized the man lying on the floor. Officer Minjun's eyes were wide open. Okay. We've read all of this too. The gunshot wound, okay. The fire was getting worse in the living room. I covered my nose while looking around, but I could barely see anything anymore. flames were now licking the clothes on Officer Minjun's body. I couldn't just leave him here. I carried his body out of the fire and handed it over to Lieutenant Kim, who had been waiting at the door. The fire had become too big for us to go back inside. We had to wait for reinforcements from the firefighters. We waited until the firefighters had put out the fire before we went into the apartment again. We found another completely immolated body in the bathroom. The next day, while I was still lamenting Officer Minjun's death, I heard another piece of shocking news. The second body was Lieutenant Kang. Yeah, that definitely sounds bad. What about this? Okay, this just changes this. I recognized the man lying on the floor. Officer Minjun's eyes were wide open. Yep. A lot of empty beer bottles were scattered on the floor, most of which were empty. Some of them were not empty though, and the beer had spilled all over the place. There were still a lot of burning candles on the floor too. Lieutenant Kang is passed out over here. I heard Lieutenant Kim's voice coming from the bathroom. Lieutenant Kang? Why was he here too? I got back up and walked to the bathroom. When I walked past the dresser in the living room, I noticed a knocked over picture frame. I flipped it over. It was a photo of Lieutenant Kang with a woman in her 30s. Lieutenant Kang looked much younger in the photo. He even seemed a little shy. Both of them were in uniform with their guns holstered. I couldn't look away from the woman in the photo for a long time. Then I finally remembered. She had been the previous lieutenant of Unit 2, Jae Gal-seok, a legendary figure in the Busan police precinct. She was a beautiful woman, but more importantly, she was considered to be better than any of the male officers on the force. She was famous for being incredibly courageous and decisive. She was the idol of almost every young police officer. Even during my days in the academy, a lot of my classmates had her photos in their private collections. That was how I had recognized her. The photo had obviously been taken before she had been killed in the line of duty. Lieutenant Kang looked like he had just joined the police too. Perhaps he was a fan of hers too. There was nothing strange about that. So, this might be Lieutenant Kang's home. Why would Min Jun's body be here then? I suddenly remembered the anonymous tip and I was starting to get more and more suspicious. Officer Min Jun had been shot. He was still in his undercover outfit, which I had seen a few times. I went back to check on his body and there was nothing else in his pockets, but I did notice a keychain attached to his waist. I heard Lieutenant Kim walking over from the bathroom. He must have been wondering why I hadn't responded yet. I quickly took the keychain off and hid it. Please, Buddha, please bless me. Bless me so that I can find the truth and avenge Officer Min Jun. Okay. Good. That's an S for both of them. How did it end up like this? How could Officer Min Jun be dead? Carlos, will I ever see you again? Stop. Stop. Oh, it was just a nightmare. No, it was more than that. Everything has already happened in reality. But I've tried everything I could. I thought it was raining. However, everything outside looks exactly the same as when I first woke up after losing my memories. The sky is still red. Snow keeps falling down. Even the snow looks red, perhaps because of the light. There doesn't seem to be anybody in the buildings on either side of the street. And there aren't any people on the street. There aren't any animals either. No small birds or little dogs. Nothing. There aren't even any trees or grass. The rain only appears in my dreams. It has never stopped snowing outside the window. Is this what the God's world looks like? I wonder what the human's world looks like right now. Yo, you're up early. What time is it now? 4 o'clock in the morning. It's only 4? Nothing seems to change outside the window. I can't even tell whether it's morning or not. The human's world is day and night, right? Why don't we have that? That's because we live in a different world. Willie, I want to go for a walk outside. I'm afraid you can't do that. Why not? To us, there is no outside. Everything you see from the window is just an illusion. This house is all there is to our world. Are you telling me that everything that I see outside the window is fake? That's correct. Everything outside is fake. Even the house that we're living in right now doesn't really exist. All of this is built by our combined imagination. Our world and the human's world have no intersections at all, not in time nor in space. Well, could we go to their world at all? By teleportation, for example, like you did earlier? Or maybe there is a door of some kind that could open to any other place you want to go to? Why do you want to go to their world so much? I haven't been feeling too well recently. This job, it's not like what I first imagined it would be. I thought I could give everyone a perfect happy ending. But tragedies keep happening, one after another. I don't know what I've done wrong. Do I not understand them well enough because I'm not human? Or is it because I'm not familiar enough with the world so I can't understand the consequences of my decisions? So you want to go there and witness their lives for yourself? Yes. Unfortunately, we are unable to go to their world. Besides, we don't really need to. We are gods. All we need to do is fulfill the human's wishes. It is not our duty to create a wonderful world based on our judgment. You have too much kindness in you, and that's why you're overthinking it. No matter what decisions you make, the humans will accept them. Simply because they don't have other options. But we're gods. How can we be so careless about their sincere wishes? Psst. Humans never truly understand what they want, ever. They get themselves into trouble, but they're afraid to take responsibility for their actions and choices. That's why they always hope the gods can fix everything for them. God will help me. God will bless me. They're nothing but a bunch of cowards and losers. As long as we help them resolve their immediate dilemmas, we have done our job. As for the other problems that lie in their future, those have nothing to do with us. The bottom line is this. Even if we don't help them at all, they have no right to complain. After all, we are gods, and they are just mere humans. Therefore, no matter what you do, you are always right. You will never be wrong. But I understand it might be a little difficult for you to accept this right now. You should just go and take a nap and get some rest. We've talked enough today. I'll go make us some breakfast. Was I really overthinking things? Well, maybe I have to do it myself. Huh. Well, we'll find out what he has to do himself eventually, but not in this episode. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.